All right, going live. All
All right,
right.
good
Good
morning,
morning,
everybody.
everybody. Welcome to the Intellese analyzing oil and gas sales volumes versus production using Power BI with your host, myself, Chris Pettigrew, and my partner in crime, as always, Mr. Kyle Souza. Today, just to let you guys know, we're going to be covering oil and gas production and sales volumes. Our last webinar that we had, it kind of tied into this with Power BI. We talked about revenue and GIBs and AFEs. And now today we're going to kind of give you guys a show through on how to use Power BI, Excel, and some data sets to actually create and compare what your volume sold versus your produced volumes. We're going to talk about how you can get that information. A little bit about myself, Chris Pettigrew from Intellese. Been around the business for about 30 years. Oil and gas lease analyst, division order analyst, GIS analyst, man of many hats, do a lot of different things. And I have my partner on here, Mr. Kyle Souza. Kyle, give us a little intro.
Hey there, I'm Kyle. I like long walks on the beach. No, I'm just joking. I've been doing land. Started with database administration, moved into a registered landman role, in-house division order analyst. Really got into GIS mapping throughout the whole thing, and these days I enjoy data. So doing a lot of oil and gas upstream, midstream data stuff.
Phenomenal. Always good to have you, Kyle. Thanks for joining us today, everybody who's live. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's a Monday morning. So, Kyle, take the wheel. Let's see what you got.
Yeah. So last time we were looking at some revenue data, right? And we went over all sorts of stuff, how to see your revenue by product, how to check out your deductions, how to check out your taxes, uh, using Power BI to kind of replace pivot tables inside of Excel. Excel has some great pivot tables, but Power BI does give you a little bit extra dimensionality. We brought in GIB data so we could see where our money is going by very specific and very general classifications on those billing statements. We started comparing GIBs and AFEs to see where stuff is the most profitable, where it's least profitable. And we even brought in AFE data to see where stuff is budget, right? We looked at some of that. And so we got to see that. So now we're going to see some new stuff. So I'm gonna open up a new tab, and we're going to take a look first at Excel. So we're going to get into use that same revenue spreadsheet that we downloaded. Now we just downloaded this data from Enverus, changed the names to protect the innocent a little bit on the wells, but we've got a few columns in here that are about our products and our N. We get our product code. Column O, we get our product code description. Words are usually easier to understand than the numbers. You'll see these numbers and descriptions on your revenue checks if you take a look at them. Column T gives us our price, right? That can come into play. And then let's go over a little bit more to the right. What do we got? We have our gross volume. That one's going to come into play because as important as our owner volume is, which is in this spreadsheet, here we go. Column AA is our owner volume. Our gross volume is what we're going to be able to compare to those state reported numbers. All right. And then we also have our distribution percent here in column R that we may take a look at later. All right, so that's our revenue check, and then everything else after AA has to do with taxes and deductions. So we're not going to worry about that for this webinar. We covered that in the last one. Recommend that you check it out.
So just for everybody to know, in your oil and gas revenue checks, when you receive them in with whether you're a royalty owner, a mineral owner, you're getting oil and gas payments, you're a non-op working interest partner, your sold volumes are contained in your revenue checks. The item that is missing that we're going to show you guys today is where to get production information. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So you're not going to get production information from your operator. You will have to source that from an outside source. We're going to show you guys a couple of different ways to do that today.
And so, again, I'm just using the same project we used last time. So we have all that same revenue data already in here. And let's just start with making a nice, simple table. So we have our visualizations here. I'm going to click on the table visualization. Oh, hold on, I got disconnected here. What is happening? All right, sorry about that. Not sure what went wrong. All right, we got our table visualization. We'll make that nice and big. And let's just throw some numbers on there, right? We got our check number. That'd be an important column. We can get our check date on there. And you can drag and drop onto the visual, or you can come down here to this columns box, and you can make changes there and drag values here. So if I wanted to change that date from being 4 columns, I could change it to be just 1 column. And then you could style that, all the different ways that you wanted. If you just wanted like 2024/01/26, that's just a style preference. Let's get those gross volumes on here. Well, we got our gross volume, but it'd be good to know the product type. So let's get product type on there also. Power BI appears to be thinking a bit hard about this one. There you go. Product code description. I can tell that the one above it is just product code because it has that little number symbol next to it. So I can see here, okay, got that. Maybe have it broken out by well if we wanted. So we put our property description on there. So I can see each well, what the volume is, instead of check date, let's get our production date in here. That's probably a more helpful one. So we get our production information in there. We can see our product codes, all those different fields. So that's just a list. Is that the most useful list, though, right? That becomes the question. Is that the most useful list? I think there's some better stuff that we can do inside of Power BI, and that has to do with some charts. So let's bring in a bar chart. Now I like to do this stacked column chart. Here we go. Stacked column chart. Oh, I changed our existing one. Let me change that back to a table. I need to do a new one. Stacked column chart. Here we go. So we got this. We'll make it a little bit bigger, make it easy to see. And let's pull up our wells. Let's see. If we do our property description on the x-axis, so property description on our x-axis, and we'll make our product codes our legend, and then we're going to make our gross volume here on the y-axis, and then we get some charts and we can start seeing what kind of wells we're working with. So I've got these ones here at the front. My North Dark Night wells here are a good mix of oil and gas. And then some of my other wells, mostly gas focused, though we do have some oil focused wells in here. So overall, I think I'm gas focused here, but let's see. One easy way to see these kind of percentages and visualize them is using a pie chart. And so let's pull that up. And if I wanted to, instead of using the gross volume, see like what's affecting me, I can use this owner volume here. So we're going to put that into the values. Now you'll notice it totals 100% because we haven't broken it up by anything. This legend box is how we break that up. And again, I'll use the product code description. So I can see that I'm actually pretty evenly split, a little bit more gas when you put the natural gas liquids plus the residue gas together than oil, but it's a pretty even split. for these revenue statements that we've got here. And then I like trend lines. That's just something that I enjoy seeing. It shows me over time what my production is like. I can start seeing patterns for things. So let's pull up this line chart visual here. And let's see, we want our dates, production date going across the bottom so that we can see it over time. And I'm not worried about quarter, and we don't need to get down into the daily granularity. That might be a little bit much for us. Just so we can see the more varied data, I'm going to use our gross volumes here. And then we again need our product code description so we can see product code description. Where are you? There we go. Put our product code description into our legend. You know, it's just showing us by year. Gotta mess with the dates a little bit. There we go. And so I can start seeing that, you know, based on these revenue checks, we really got going in October. And then it started really rocketing up in November. And I haven't gotten paid my December gas well production yet, but I have gotten paid some December oil. So that's you know, just some quick insights into the production data just from the revenue statements, right? This is what is actually being paid on. We're going to get into some state reported production data, but before we do, any questions? Nope. Okay. All right. You know, we use Restream here. Let me pull this up. Sorry, I thought I already had this one. I'm going to pull in some data from Well Database. If anybody's not familiar with Well Database, they are a service that aggregates data from all the different state reporting agencies. They have a few different subscriptions that you can go with, including a free one. Check out the trial of the Essential plan that lets you start doing data exports, which is what I did. I just used the Excel data export that comes default with it. And you go all the way up to the Pro one that includes an AU Excel downloads if you have that API access. But the Essential lets you do the Excel downloads, and the Lite version, which is free, you can copy and paste stuff out of it. You can research things. It's a good way to get started. So let's see here. I'm going to open up that spreadsheet that I downloaded from them. This is our demo well data spreadsheet. And so you can see it's pretty simple. I've got my well name. I've got my type of well, got my well status, my operator, lat and long, which we'll get into in a little bit. I can see some production information, first producing date, the last reported date, my cumulative, and my last reported numbers. So pretty straightforward spreadsheet, not too many columns. We're going to bring that into our project. So let me minimize this one. I like to make that a little bit bigger. And then let's go get data from Excel. We're just going to bring on our demo well data spreadsheet that we were just looking at. Bring in that header data. All right. Load that. Don't need to do any transformations with this one. It's going to bring in that Excel data. You know, when you start working with a good number of wells and you have data over time and stuff like that, we definitely recommend getting data into a database like a SQL Server database. But Power BI does work with Excel, and it's an easy way to get things started. All right, so let's see what kind of insights we might be able to gather just from this, like I said, straightforward spreadsheet here. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's another spreadsheet that I downloaded that I forgot to show you. Let me go back to that one because we're going to use it in a couple minutes. And that is this production details. So what I did is I went to one well in particular and I downloaded the production history. And again, it's just the well name for that one well name. Then I've got my month and year that the production got reported. And then I can see the oil, gas, and water that was reported for that month. So again, this is one of the more straightforward spreadsheets. There's all sorts of stuff you can download from Well Database or other places. You can get it directly from the state if you want to. Well Database does have competitors out there. That's just who I'm using here. Been using them for a minute. So we got that. All right, so let's see what we can get. Let's go just a simple table. I like to start with tables. So we'll do another simple little table here. And let's pull in our well name. And we can see what type of well it is. And we could see how much gas and how much oil it's given. I'm not going to worry too much about the water for this demo here. But nice, simple overall. What have we got? So this is just recreating a spreadsheet, basically. Now, one thing that people sometimes overlook because it's a little simple is that you can actually use Power BI to design spreadsheets. So if you have data from multiple spreadsheets that you can connect together, you can bring that into Power BI. You can set up your table, and then you can go over here to more options and say export data, and that will actually export a CSV file that you can then open in Excel or give to somebody else. So Power BI, it's great for visualizations. That's what it's designed for. It can also be used to create new Excel exports. So keep that in mind. All right, let's see here. Do a little pie chart for us. Again, got those pie charts. What do we want to see on here? Let's get our product. Yeah, let's just see our product breakdown. Let's do that. So where are we? Cumulative oil, cumulative gas. We'll bring the water in on this one just to get more colors. So there we go. We got our breakdown of how these wells are producing. We can see that these wells are producing mostly gas. Good stuff. I'm going to move this a little bit up to here because what I really want to do is show another trend line. Like I said, I like trend lines. Oh my goodness. Okay. Show another trend line here. We'll add that in. I'm going to drag it all the way across. And let's go get that detail spreadsheet. So that was in here. We got our production data. Bring this in. Load it. All right. You can see my production details here now. All right, so for this one, how should we do it? Again, we want our date over time. So date's going to go along the bottom. That's our x-axis. And then for our y-axis, this data, it's organized very different than the revenue data. So we're actually going to make all three of these as, actually, we'll just look at gas and oil for our y-axis here. So we can start seeing over time what our trends are for our production. I think that's pretty cool. Now, sometimes the date might get a little finicky. So what we can do is we can remove the month and then add the month back. Sometimes that makes it look the way that we want it to. So now I can really see, okay, I had a lot of volatility, especially with my gas production each month. And while it may have peaked back in 2020, may have gotten or something here back in 2023, but since July of 2023, it's been pretty steady. The mid 5,000 to high 4,000s MCF. I'm sorry, oil. I was actually looking at barrels of oil there. So mid 4,000s to mid 5,000s and around 30,000 MCF each month. So that gives me a fun trend line. Now, the reason I did one well is because if you load in 100 wells, like I think I have 90 something wells in this project, if you load in 100 wells on here, it can get pretty crazy if you do lines for each well. So I didn't want to get into all that styling, but just know that it is possible. Now, what would be the most useful thing, though, in my opinion, once you have your revenue data and your production data, is seeing how they compare. So we're going to make another chart that compares those two. Now, just to take a look again at how this data is different from one another, let's take a look at a table here. And we got our map data, and we can see our check number. We don't need the check number on there. Let's just get the well name on there. So we got our well name on there. We got our property code description on there. Let's get our owners. Get our gross volume. There we go. We're going to put our gross value on there. All right, so we get this table, and we can see that the way this is organized is we have more than one line for each well, because it's showing me well 1 natural gas liquids, well 1 oil, well 1 residue gas, and then I go to well 2 and I have multiple lines for each one depending on how many checks it's coming from, production dates, my production code, and then the volume. So when we look at our data from well database or wherever you get it from, it can be styled different. We're just going to compare these side by side so it's easy to see. Put that up right next to it. And so if I pull in my well name here, and then I look at my production date, and then I pull in my gas and my oil for each month, I can see that I only have one line because my gas and my oil are in two separate columns, as opposed to from my revenue check where it's all in one column. Now, this is the most exciting part to me, because you could go and through some manipulations basically create new spreadsheets that puts these into the same style, right? And for years or decades, that's what we've been doing, is data transformation to make formats match. But there's actually some transformation tools built right into Power BI to where we don't have to do that work outside of it. And so we're going to get into a little bit of an advanced thing called DAX inside of Power BI. So for that, we come over here to our table view. And we want to look at our production details for the Batman. And I'm going to just copy and paste a DAX statement that I've already created for this. We're going to do new column. And I'm going to paste that in. There we go. So what I'm saying is that I want a column called gas sold that is going to sum the gross volume from my revenue check where my property description matches my well name and my product code are my gas product codes of 20 and 30, and the month and year from the revenue check match the month and year from my oil and gas production data. So we're going to do that for gas, and then we're going to do a very similar one for oil that's just going to be named different and have, oh, cannot find table. Oh, you know what? I named these differently on my sample. That's my problem. Mapped data. There we go. That'll fix it for us. All right, let's save that. All right, and we can see that it gets rid of all those errors and would bring in any data that it finds. So let's head over. Let's make another new column. Let me copy my oil one. We got, oh. Come on, Control C. Don't fail me now. There we go. Map data. Put all those in. All right, we can save that. Now, one thing that we want to check is we want to make sure that our tables are connected together. That way they can bring data in one from another. So that is where we get into our relationships here inside of Power BI. Like I said, this is a little bit more advanced. But let's see, we have our production details. Okay, and it did auto map these. We can see the relationship that it sensed, right? Because it will auto sense some. So based on well name to well name, it gets that. And then our header is connected there. Now, one thing we could do if we wanted is we could deactivate this relationship from our production detail to the well header, and we can have one that goes directly to our mapped data. And that way it doesn't have to jump through so many hoops. And you can see I'm not deleting the old one. I'm just activating the old one. So this is property description that we're looking for here. Oh, a little too far. All right, got property description here. And we'll make this a little bit bigger. We can see our well name. Scrolled all the way back up to the top there. All right. Drag and drop property description on top of well name, and that will make that connection for us. We're okay with it being many to many and go in both directions. Oh, that's unusual. All right, maybe I do need to delete that connection first instead of just deactivating it. There we go. All right, so those are connected together. If we look back at our table view, we'll see that it's able to bring in data for it just based on the calculations that we gave it for that DAX statement and those tables being connected together. And now we can create a really fun trend line. In my opinion, at least, it's fun. I like it. And actually, we're going to do more than just a trend line. We're going to do a line and column chart. All right. I have notes on my settings here. I'll make sure I get them right. All right. As always, date along the bottom. So we're going to use our production date here. And then we have our sum of gas sold. Sum of oil sold. We're going to make those charts. Spread those out a little bit. And then let's get our production numbers to be lines. Oh, you know what? We should have the year back in there. Be good to have. And so we can see now, and if you want, we could style this so that our colors matched. But I can see blue is my gas light blue is my gas that's been sold. Dark blue is my oil that's been sold. Orange is how much was actually produced for gas. Purple is how much was actually produced for oil. Let's put a filter in here so that we can maybe see it a little bit easier. Let me make this smaller. Come on. Scroll over. All right. Wasn't letting me grab it on the other side, so we're just going to put a slicer right in the middle. And if we slice this based on year here, and let's just say 2023 to 2024, because we're using some 2023 production data. That gives us just a nice little close-up of it, right? So now I can see, okay, my oil, they sold 5,584 barrels. They produced that same month 5,488 barrels. Okay, so somehow they sold a little bit more than they produced. Excuse me, maybe there was some backstock. I'm not sure there. That's something that can be looked into. But what's more concerning or more interesting to me is that they sold 24,400 MCF, but they produced 28,700 MCF. So they're sitting on 4,000 MCF from that month that they didn't sell. I need to see if they're going to sell it in the future.
Yeah, so something that's important to note here is that your sold volumes versus your produced volumes will not always be exact. There's a lot of reasons why. Sometimes trucking can't pick up all the oil. Sometimes the pipelines or the midstream company, the purchaser, does not have the bandwidth within the lines to pick up all the MCF. So you do want to trend this over time. You want to look and see if they did catch back up in a couple of months or the month after. A beautiful thing about Power BI is it allows you to go month over month over month and continue to build like Kyle's showing you. And you can even set red flags up, automated red flags. What differences? Do we have a 10% difference, a 50% difference, variances in numbers? Trim these out before you start calling your purchaser, before you start calling your operator, making sure that you're not just being a fly on the wall and bugging them about things all the time, but it gives you a good insight to see exactly what you're doing.
Sorry about that. My battery decided to give me a low battery message, and well, it said it would last. I didn't want to take any risks, so plugged it in real quick. All right. So yeah, so those are our quick overviews of the things you can do with your revenue data coming from your revenue check, and then also from that monthly production report out of Well Database. Now, there are some other cool things you could do. Like I said, you can get that data from other sources, but one thing that Well Database includes is it includes your latitude and longitude. So we could start making a map here inside of Power BI that can also bring in data from the sources that we have.
So before you move on to that, Kyle, what other sources can we gather our production information from if we were not to use Well Database?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could go directly to the state for it, the Texas Railroad Commission, Oklahoma Corporate Commission, North Dakota Industrial Commission. There's different places where you can get that from. Everest does have drilling info. There's a new one. There's a new one that you showed me that I can't remember.
I know there's a bunch of different pay-to-play services that are out there. For many, many years, I would go pull information from the RRC or from Endrin or from Sunrise. One of the things that I noticed that pulling from the government bodies is that they don't always have a Excel download you can pull. You kind of have to fill out your own spreadsheets and whatnot. So at the end of the day, the beauty of what we like about Well Database is that it's a one-stop shop. I can go in there and pull different wells from different states, different operators. They cull it all together for you. They pull it all together for you. And, of course, if you sign up for the minimum subscription, you can get those Excel downloads. It makes your job a little bit easier. I think it really just depends on how big you are and how many wells and how many different places that you may have your information stored. So I highly recommend going with a service like Well Database. But if you only have a couple of wells, you can obviously go source that information. If you're just in Texas, you can go to the RFC. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. But Well Database is also free, and you can source it the same way. So I really do like those guys at Well Database. Shout out to Jerry and John over there. They built a really superior product, so go check them out at the end of the day. But, of course, there's different places you can get that production. I have never had any success in calling an operator and asking them what their production is and getting the information over from them. To me, that's the place that you would go to go and get well production information.
Yeah, and Well Database also standardizes the data. So like in Texas, you might have an active status for a well, and then in Louisiana, it might say active well. And then in Mississippi, it might be right. ACT, right? And so if you're getting data from multiple states, they go through a data normalization process that standardizes things, and other pay-to-play providers do that as well. But it's a real benefit when you're working with data from multiple states to have the same column names and the same expected values across the board. Yeah. All right, you guys ready to see a map?
We're ready.
I love it. All right. So inside Power BI, there are some included map controls, right? And so the basic one here is just called map. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And there's some things you can do on it. We're going to go to our header information here. We're going to just match longitude to longitude, latitude to latitude. We can color it here by our well type.
Now, just to be clear, Kyle, is this built into Power BI, or are you doing this with an ArcGIS license?
This version right here is built into Power BI.
You do not need an ArcGIS license to do what you're showing everybody right now. Very cool.
Correct. So this one right here, is built right into Power BI, and I just add my latitude and longitude, which gives me my well spots, and then I put my name as my tooltip, and color coded it based on the type of well, so I can see which ones are oil wells, condensate wells, wet gas, volatile oil. Nice and simple, right? That's a good simple map for you. But if you subscribe to ArcGIS Online, which starts at $500 per year, you get some extra controls. And we can actually do an ArcGIS map, which is this one right here. And I'm going to continue as guest. Now, if you're doing this with your real live data, I would not continue as guest. You want to get a paid subscription to ArcGIS Online, because if you use the free subscription or continue as a guest and you publish it to the internet, that data is accessible to anybody. So you see, I'm not going to save it. I'm not going to publish it. And I'm going to continue as guest. And I'm using some fake data here, right? So I'm not worried about it. We can get that same latitude and longitude on here. We can also do some color coding based on
what you're showing right now is
type.
actually the ArcGIS integration into Power BI, and using your data from Power BI to load the ArcGIS information over. Like Kyle said, if you signed on, you would be able to customize your layers. You'd be able to work with your GIS department or your GIS mapper, whoever you have on staff, to get some more in-depth information. It does allow you to do a little bit more, a lot more mapping-esque information. And as you can see right here, what Kyle's loading up. And then as well, just moving this information into ArcMap or ArcGIS Online, and you could have it on the dual screen, or you could just keep Power BI by itself if you just wanted to use ArcGIS Online as your mapping system completely as well.
Yeah, so inside ArcMap, you get some extra options. You get some finer tooth control, right? ArcMap is a mapping solution. That's what they're there for. And so you get some finer control when it comes to symbolizing. If you want to change your colors, it's really easy to do. I also made the size of the spot change based on how much it's producing. The more gas it's producing, the bigger the dot. So that's how I did that. And we can see what those dots mean. We can see what our colors mean. We can go in here. We can change our base map. Now, these are all just the free publicly available base maps. So if we load in, say, OpenStreetMaps, we get that in there. If you have that paid ArcGIS Online subscription, you can create your own base maps that maybe, or you can bring in, surveys and abstracts in Texas, township range section, elsewhere, parcel data, all that kind of stuff. One thing you can do with the ArcMap extension or ArcMap version of the map control that you can't do with the regular ones, you can select multiple wells at a time. And there's different things you can do with those wells as far as analyzing is concerned. So I can see here I've got 12 features selected. So there's some options there. Because we don't have private layers loaded, there's some stuff that you just won't be able to see. But you can also go in and add some more stuff to the tooltips that maybe makes this a little more useful. If we look at our last reported production date, you know what, let's make that a single value. And then we'll just bring in our last produced gas, last produced oil. And now I can see, okay, my Nightwing E23 well, here's what it produced last month versus the Sprayberry Dick Grayson. Here's what it produced. Come up here more north, we get our Dark Knight B17. So you start getting some tooltips here, and you can do this join layer. If you have ArcMap set up, that allows you to join layers together, and then you can start showing GIS data from other sources. So if you have a kind of a cross section of GIS data there, once you load in your other data sets, that's what ArcMap lets you do. But the regular built-in Power BI map also lets you do, plenty of cool things where you can select a well, and you can see any data that is connected to it. So if you wanted to see, let me take a look at my relationships real quick, make sure I've got this right. All right, I've got my header data, goes to here, goes to here. Okay, so let's try something. I'm going to bring in my owner gross revenue as a tooltip on here. And let me see one of the ones that's, if I can find one of the ones that's connected real quick. All right, those ones aren't connected. I was hoping I'd have one that I could mouse over real quick and see our dollar amounts. I ventured into the winging it portion. And it didn't quite.
Well, that's the beauty of Power.
Oh, okay, so it's not bringing those in.
You can do stuff. There's, as Kyle's saying, he's winging it right now. He's kind of adding some into this. We have about, maybe around 8 more minutes left, and I see what Kyle's doing here. So, as you learn Power BI, I really highly recommend that you take some courses out there. I've taken some courses on Coursera. They've been very effective on how to build Power BI, how to use data, data transformation, data loading. Data cleanliness, I think, is a huge piece to talk about here. None of this really works unless you have clean data. So, there is some preparation stages that we're not showing you guys, basically because that just takes too long to show. We may do an actual live or a webinar on data cleaning, showing the different types of data that's out there. So feel free, if you're a Power BI user, feel free to play around with it a little bit. Look at different ways, fail, win. There's lots of different ways to build things out in this, and we're only showing you a couple and some things that we can think of within the time that we have, or a lot of time.
Yes, I see what I need to do here. I just need to move my relationships around a little bit so I can connect these two tables directly together. And then what I wanted to work will work. Well name to property description. Save that. All right, there we go. Now I start being able to see my ownership, my revenue data on my map. See here, owner volume, owner gross revenue. Those will be the two biggest ones, right? And my regular gross revenue. So now when I mouse over it, I can see how much money I'm making off of what volume and what the total gross is for that well. And that's something that you used to have to go to a GIS department for. I mean, I made tons of maps for oil and gas companies showing production information and revenue information on a map so they could just visualize what their best producing wells were on a map geographically. And now you can do it inside Power BI with a couple of spreadsheets in less than an hour's worth of work.
Yeah, it's very cool, especially the fact that you don't have to go to an outside source or somebody else in the office. This is a really basic map. As you see, Kyle added some more information to it, but I would say, you don't have to even be a GIS mapper to understand how this works. You don't have to, take a bunch of GIS classes. It's really all about the loading the data. The lat longs is what puts it all back there. And then you're adding the data that we were just working with a little bit ago. So, if you want to spend some time on building this on yourself, that's the point of these webinars and these LinkedIn Lives is to actually show you can do this. You want to be able to spend some time in doing it. You can pull it off. It doesn't take a whole degree to learn a whole nother part of the business, and just get good at Power BI.
Yeah. So last time we looked at our revenue data to see how much money we're making off of which products, where our money was going as far as deductions concerned, where our money was going as joint interest billing states were concerned, how we're getting charged on each invoice. We compared that to AFEs so we could see what stuff is under budget and over budget, our JIB to revenue to see what stuff is the most profitable. We then started comparing this time our production numbers from the state to our production numbers of what's sold on the check so we could start understanding, are we working with mostly gas, mostly oil? How's our production over time going? How's our payment over time going? And then comparing those so that we can see how much is getting sold versus how much is getting produced to see if there's any gaps. We have our regular built-in map control, and then if we want to get fancy, we can upgrade to the ArcGIS Online map control, which is if you get that ArcGIS Online creator subscription for $500 a year, then you can get this control inside of Power BI and start using it. So, yeah. Any questions from the audience?
All right, Kyle, it looks like we don't have any questions. I don't see any comments coming through. Thanks to everybody for joining in that joined in live. If you weren't able to make it to us on this Monday morning, please know that it'll be on our LinkedIn site, also on our YouTube channel. Check us out there. Pretty soon you'll be able to see us on Facebook, and we'll have these going on. Our plan is to have these about once a month, so we're going to come up with a couple of different topics and continue on showing everybody that's out there how you can use Microsoft Power, Power BI, and the Power Suite, and what it's all about. Again, take some self-training. You get some courses out there. YouTube's a wonderful place that you can do a lot of things for free. And if anybody has any topics that they would like to discuss or would like us to demo, please feel free to reach out to either Kyle or myself via LinkedIn. You can go ahead and make comments onto our post, and we will take into consideration so we can build out some webinars or LinkedIn Lives based upon what the crowd's looking for. So, Kyle, you got anything else you want to talk about today?
No, not today. I'm looking forward to our next one. So check out the details on that. They'll be coming soon.
Yes. So thank you, everybody who joined us live today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy Monday, and have a wonderful week. Enjoy yourselves, and we will catch you next time.